Hello and welcome back to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. My name is Kyle Boone, and with me, as always, Mr. Adam Finkelstein of 247 Sports Lore, Director of Scouting. Adam Finkelstein, we are less than a week out from the 2024 NBA Draft. Hallelujah, my friend. Very excited about this.
Kyle Boone, nicest man in America. Always happy to be here with you.
Let's go. So we've already done some pre-draft content. We've talked about some guards, some wings, some centers. We talked a little bit about who we like more than some other consensus. And today we're going to talk about bold predictions. I've got 3 bold predictions. You have 3 bold predictions.
I have 2, and then one that is being representative from the producer standpoint. So let's just be clear here.
I like it. I can co-opt your producer opinion. I can get there. Maybe we can share it as a final opinion. It's a shared opinion. Bold prediction.
All right.
We're just gonna fire them off.
Yeah.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
My first bold prediction. It feels like the least bold of my bold predictions is that the best player in the draft does not end up going number 1. There's a little bit of drama.
You mean best player like right now, or like the guy who ends up being the best player?
The guy who ends up being the best player. Okay, so like in 10 years, we'll look back and be like, oh man, Stephon Castle was the best player and ended up going number 6 to the Hornets or something. That could definitely happen. I think it's likely to happen. There is some drama as we talk here on Wednesday afternoon because Jonathan Givony earlier today reported that not only is Zachary Resache currently the front runner, the favorite to go number 1 to the Atlanta Hawks,
as I reported in my mock yesterday. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, and as we have made adjustments here in the last week, my latest mock draft last week, of course, had Resache at number 1 in my mock draft, but also that Donovan Clingan has kind of elbowed himself into the discussion at number 1. Alex R has not been able to get in for a workout with the Atlanta Hawks, who hold the number 1 overall pick. I think he's still in the mix there, but it sounds like at this point, at least according to Givony, that both Clingan and Resache are currently kind of the guys who are sitting there as the most contemplated prospects for the Hawks at number 1.
We talked about this yesterday on the 24/7 sports show with the NBA draft intel. And what my intel said yesterday was that, it's kind of conflicting reports. Atlanta's saying, hey, we don't like Sarr. Sarr's agency is saying, hey, we don't want him to go there. I don't think it makes sense for Atlanta to leak that they don't like him, because then let's assume it's true. They could just posture that they do like him and then try and trade back to somebody who does, presumably Washington at 2, pick up another asset. So it doesn't really make sense for Atlanta just to tell people they don't like him. That is assuming that they're unified in that Atlanta front office, which isn't always the case. So, but the other thing we said is that, Clingan's a possibility, Resache, who we mocked there yesterday. But I've heard they like Reed Shepherd a little bit too. Not that I think they would take him at 1, but just that if trading back becomes an option, I think Reed Shepherd is a possibility there as well. Buzelis and Castle, I think, have worked out as well.
Yep. Yeah. That's
not your bold take though.
No, it's not, but it's just a backdrop to my bold take. I don't know who's going to end up going number 1. I think right now it's probably Resache. If you go to the betting odds markets, Alex Sarr still the favorite to go number 1. Either way, Resache, Sarr, if either of those guys go number 1, I think the best player will end up coming from number 2, number 3, somewhere down the line. If Clingan goes at number 5 or something, I think Clingan can end up being the best player in this class. If Castle ends up slipping, obviously, which right now we don't expect he's in the mix.
Do you like Castle?
Stephon Castle, he's a good basketball player. I really enjoy him. I need to get like a Stephon Castle tattoo or something, like across my.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I know people in high school, they used to get like tattoos on their lips, like underneath. And I don't think they last for very long, but maybe that's what I need to do. Just like I can pull my lip down and it shows.
Where did you go to high school?
Listen, Tulsa, Oklahoma. We do things a little different around here.
People got tattoos on the inside of their lips.
Yeah, that happened. That was a thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, I never got to experience that, but maybe my wild side can get a Stephon Castle tattoo on the inside of my lip to really seal the deal. And I don't think they're like permanent, just because a lot of slobber there.
Oh,
Maybe
well then, I mean, you might as well go ahead and get it done. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like maybe it would come off, and then by this time next year, I can have a Cooper flag tattoo and just like keep this thing rolling.
We're losing control here, Boone. We got to get this back on.
Yeah, so steering back on the ship, that's my belief. I don't think the best player ends up going number one in this draft. It's probably going to be Stephon Castle. Here's your bold prediction. First one, Mr. Adam Finkelstein.
My bold prediction, similar to what we just discussed, is that there is going to be a trade in the top half of the lottery, and I think it's very possible that it could center around Donovan Clingan. As we reported yesterday, Atlanta is believed to like him, at least some fragment at minimum of their franchise. I don't want to assume. I'm sure there's some internal disagreements in there, but I do think there is a growing Donovan Clingan sentiment in Atlanta. But Memphis and Chicago are being very active in trying to trade up for him, and they have a couple of potential trade partners. I think Houston is very willing to hear offers and potentially move down. I think Charlotte is potentially willing to hear offers and potentially move down. So I think that Memphis in particular, if they have an opportunity to trade up for Donovan Clingan, I think they will do it. But to be clear, I don't think that Donovan Clingan is the only reason we could see a potential trade in the top half of the lottery. I think he's the most likely one. But Atlanta, we talked about, how trading down was a potential option for them. Would San Antonio trade up? Are we hearing some Reese posturing now so that maybe San Antonio is more inclined to move up and try and get not just a Frenchman next to Wemby, but someone who can really space the floor next to Wemby? Maybe give Atlanta back one of the draft picks that they took from them in that previous deal. So I think there's the potential for a lot of different moves. And to that end, I don't know that there's a team. I'm sure there is, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a team who I have heard, they are definitely keeping that pick. Like when you look at those top seven, I think pretty much everybody is at least willing to listen. So I think one of those first seven picks has a pretty good chance of being moved in the next week or so.
Yeah, and at this point, I don't think there's a ton of appetite for teams trying to move up, just because in this draft class in particular, you're not moving up for a Brandon Miller, a Scoot Henderson, or a Victor Wembanyama. But of the players that I think people are trying to position for, Donovan Clingan consistently comes up as the guy who I think a lot of teams are very, very interested in. So that's a bold prediction. I like it. Obviously, Memphis, just to kind of circle back here, have the number 9 pick in this draft. So would probably take a lot to get into Donovan Clingan range, but you never know what happens.
Like if he slips, if Atlanta doesn't take him, and then Washington doesn't take him, San Antonio's not taking him.
Nope.
So I think Houston's not taking him. So I think it comes down to, is there somebody on the board that they like better than what they would get in that trade? So did they value Reed Shepherd, Stephon Castle? I'm not sure they have your tattoo. Do they value them more, or did they value what they would get in a trade more? I think that's the calculus. And I think that's why we're hearing all these rumors now, because part of the game is like leaking stuff out and working the intel and trying to see what comes from that.
Yep. No, I think that's absolutely true. It's weird in that Clingan has a pretty wide range of outcomes, it feels like. There's a decent chance he ends up going number 1 as we kind of sit here right now. That looks possible. But yeah, like of the guys who we think are going to be top picks, Clingan actually could be a guy who ends up falling a little bit farther than maybe people expect. So that could open the door, obviously, for the Memphis Grizzlies, who pick at number 9. My second bold prediction here, Mr. Finkelstein, I'm going to go with the Spurs, who pick at number 4 and number 8. Will end up selecting one of the 2 Kentucky guards with their top picks, assuming, again, that they hold pat, stay at number 4 and number 8. Reed Shepherd or Rob Dillingham. Reed Sheppard has been linked pretty heavily to the Houston Rockets, who pick at number 3. Rob Dillingham, as we'll talk about in just a little bit, is a guy who I think is slipping down boards, or at least behind closed doors, a guy who I think has been kind of rumored to potentially be slipping a little bit. But I think the Spurs are pretty set on trying to bolster their backcourt around Victor Wembanyama. Reed Sheppard, his playmaking, his defense, his athleticism. Oh my gosh, the fit would be fantastic in San Antonio. Not sure he's going to fall that far. But if he does, I think that they scoop him up at number 4. That would be ideal. Dillingham could be in the mix there at number 8. And, kind of we'll see kind of the suitors there for Rob Dillingham. But I think San Antonio ends up with one of the Kentucky guys to help bolster their backcourt long-term around Victor Wembanyama.
All right. I'm just going to play right off that and go with my bold prediction, number 2. This is on behalf of people pushing the buttons behind the scenes and making this happen. Rob Dillingham will fall outside of the lottery. And my intel tells me that San Antonio is not going to be drafting Rob Dillingham. We're hearing that Dillingham may be slipping. And again, I'm going to reemphasize this. What's being heard right now is oftentimes it's the rope-a-dope. It's the old Muhammad Ali, like, oh, I'm about to pass out because I'm about to knock you out, So
screen season.
San Antonio's saying they're not interested in Rob Dillingham, but to your previous point, maybe they are. But as it stands right now, it seems like Rob Dillingham is starting to slide a little bit. And I don't have him in my personal top 10. I think it's very likely he slips outside of that. And I think there's increasing potential for him to slip outside of the lottery as you start to hear other guards, Devin Carter, to a lesser extent, Jared McCain, being talked about and valued potentially more than Dillingham, which was not the consensus about a month ago. I think there's concerns about his size and defense, basically, is what it comes down to. The dynamic skill set, shot making, handle, all that stuff is indisputable. But the physicality and ability and, quite frankly, willingness to defend, I think, are becoming increasing question marks here in recent days and weeks.
Yeah, and he's dealing with an ankle injury, so hasn't really been active on the pre-draft circuit. So I don't think that's helped his case either. A lot of these guys have been able to showcase themselves to teams during this process. Dillingham, had an injury, I think, leading into the combine, and has mostly been inactive for the last month. So I'm sure that
he's 160 pounds, right?
160 pounds. Yeah.
Do you know the last time I was 160 pounds, Boone? I think I was in like the 4th grade.
That's incredible.
It wasn't a solid 160.
I think it was like 28 by the time I reached 160.
Yeah, no, I was not 160 at 28. No,
that's impressive.
Right. Moving on.
Just to add to your bold prediction, I think if he doesn't go to the Spurs at number 8, he slips out of the lottery. I'm with you there.
Oh, so you see, and I don't think he's going to the Spurs. Interesting.
Okay.
So I think Sacramento is like an interesting destination there as they try and replace Malik Monk in free agency. Yeah. But that's, again, do they want him or do they want Jared McCain? It'll be interesting. So,
or did they want Zach Edey at number 13?
I mean, what would be amazing is if Zach Edey and Steph Castle could go on the same team, and you got like tattoos on like each cheek or something like that.
Yes, that's what we need.
You must have been conflicted in the final game.
I was. I could go like full Post Malone, multi tattoos.
I digress. What's your third bold opinion?
Third bold prediction: Bub Carrington becomes the best point guard of the 2024 NBA draft class. Now, this is not shade on my man Stephon Castle, who I still believe in, but I do believe that Stephon Castle, while he can play point guard at the NBA level, I don't think he profiles as like a true lead guard. And frankly, I'm okay with that just because of his defense, intangibles, the things he does, I think contributes to winning. But Bub Carrington, I think, will end up being the best point guard from this draft class. And the shot making versatility that he brings to the table, the kind of pizzazz that he plays with with his handles. There's a lot of stuff in his bag, so to speak, that I think translates at a really high level. Carrington has been rising, I think, behind closed doors over the last, I don't know, month or
Yeah.
so. And going into this season, he was not someone who we thought would be a potential one and done, but he's made remarkable progress over the last year. Was stellar at Pitt last season as a true freshman. And I think he's going to end up being a top 20 pick. And I don't think it's crazy to think that we look back in 5 years and think like, wow, how did this guy, almost like the Tyrese Maxey thing, where like, how did this guy slip as far as he did? Because he ended up being one of the best players from this draft. I think we could look back in a similar sense with Bub Carrington on draft night.
So we talked about Bub, or I made my pitch for Bub on last week's episode, coming off that mock. So you can go check that one out. I'm enthusiastic about him as well. I think that the rate of improvement he's shown in the last year has exceeded all expectations. He's got a good pull-up game. He's a good on-ball defender. He's got to get better off the ball. I think he's going to require some patience physically, before he can play through the physicality. He's got to add some strength, but I think he's a very intriguing long-term prospect. But I've got a similar take along those lines, and it's about another guard who's going to require some patience. But my third bold prediction is that AJ Johnson gets a guaranteed deal, which means not a two-way. He either goes in the first round or he gets a guaranteed deal in the second round. Okay. AJ Johnson was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school last year. He actually slid a little bit in the senior class. He was committed to Texas along with Ron Holland when they went through that coaching change. Obviously went over going to the NBL in Australia. Didn't put up like huge numbers. In fact, throughout most of the year, he was out of the draft dialogue. Got to the combine, and there is an aesthetic about AJ Johnson that is really captivating when you watch him play, because he's a big guard. He's super smooth. He's polished with the ball in his hands, so he looks pretty good. And I think for scouts, that makes you more inclined to want to bet on him. So even though the markers haven't been there yet, I was as enthusiastic about him, probably more so than anyone in the high school space, going back to like 2 years ago now, in the summer before his senior year. And it was for those reasons. You just don't see a whole lot of big guards who can handle the ball and move that fluidly. What I like about him now is that you can see he's starting to add muscle, and then he's not losing any of that fluidity. Sometimes when you have, these guards who are skinny early on in high school, when their body starts to change, they don't move the same way. He is moving the same way. So I like Bub Carrington. He's not, even more so than Bub Carrington, he's not someone that's going to be NBA ready next season. But I do think the long-term upside is going to be enticing enough for someone to take a shot at him, whether that's in the late first round or with the guaranteed deal in the second round. And I do have him mocked as a late first round pick most recently.
Okay, I like that. And he's been rising pretty steadily after the combine. Looked really good at the combine in scrimmages, which was surprising to me because, I'll be honest, like he fell off my radar during the year. Had to go back and watch some of his tape from this past season with Illawarra, and he looks like an NBA player. And so, if he ends up slipping, moving up into the first round, I think that would be surprising to me. But if he ends up getting a guaranteed deal, like, somewhere in the 30s or 40s, that makes a lot of sense, just given his progression and development and his profile. Like he's really smooth. He's very athletic, does a lot of different things, and someone who I think has been kind of a late riser.
And you know what else he did at the combine? And this was growth. He passed the ball well. So I think, you made that point about the lack of point guard depth in this class now, because you got Topic, who's now, maybe not likely to play next season. Isaiah Collier, people go back and forth on. You just talked about Bub Carrington. Like there's a lot of, when it comes to like the point guards, people are saying like, all right, is Castle a point guard? Is Jared McCain a point guard? I think people look at Johnson now, and after the way he passed the ball at the combine, they say he is a point guard and he's got really good size and all those other things we already talked about. And that makes him that much more interesting as a long-term proposition.
Yeah, especially in that environment too at the combine, because in Chicago, I talked to a few players and kind of bounced some ideas off of them, kind of talking about scrimmage takeaways, and a lot of the guys who ended up being like so-called risers or who looked good during scrimmages, it was because they had the ball in their hands, they were ball dominant, they were able to attack and be aggressive. KJ Simpson, for example, and so AJ Johnson, in the way that he stood out, I thought was very impressive, because a lot of guys at the combine just are very aggressive. They are me. It's not a team game at the combine scrimmages, and he was very selfless with the way that he passed, with his passing vision, and just did a lot of different things with the ball in his hands. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that AJ Johnson has an interesting future NBA career ahead of him, and someone who's been a late riser during this process. I like your bold take here, Mr. Finkelstein. We have 3 bold takes each. That's going to do it. You got any final bonus takes for us, Mr. Finkelstein? Because I think I'm cooking one up back here.
You got a fourth? No, you sprung that one on me. I do not have a fourth. Do you still have a fourth if you're not allowed to talk about Stephon Castle or Zach Edey? Or does that?
All right, that's going to do it for the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page.
Come on. Give it to me.
Zach Edey goes in the lottery. Let's get spicy. I think he goes in the 10 to 14 range.
All right, so can I add to that?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So on our 24/7 sports show, on the same Intel segment, we talked about Memphis trying to trade up for Donovan Clingan. The other thing we discussed is that both Zach Edey and Kalal Ware have worked out for Memphis and reportedly worked out well. So the potential is also there for Memphis to trade down. If they are not able to trade up for Clingan, they could trade down in an attempt to land Edey or maybe Kalal Ware, who's obviously a high risk, high reward type prospect. But I do think that Memphis is intrigued by Zach Edey. I'm not sure there's momentum to take him as early at 9, but there's still a week left for that to change.
Interesting. Yeah, Kalal Ware is another one who's been steadily rising late in this draft process. I think we're just less than a week away from the NBA draft. Pumped to follow the final week of this draft process. Pumped to join you and talk with you as always. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll be back here soon.
Everybody.
Hopefully we'll be back here soon. Y'all go follow the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. Go follow Adam Finkelstein on Twitter. You're missing out if you're not doing that. And we will catch you guys in this space here real soon. Y'all take care.
Kyle Baboon.
That's right.